So another thing that you're going to be definitely interested in is how you're going to meet girls if you come here. So I've given you an overview of the looks, whether they're open to foreigners, but where are you going to meet them? So what is basically the social scene like here in Lviv, and how does that differ from maybe other cities in the region that maybe you're also familiar with?
SAR Experience.
Всем привет and welcome back to another episode of the Volga Podcast with me, Connor Klein. I am speaking to you from Lviv in Western Ukraine, and that is the theme of today's video. Should you come here to Lviv for girls? Now, the genesis to this video is guys like you, in fact, because my clients especially have been asking me about which cities they should go to depending on their preferences, and obviously a question that comes up is where are the best girls, and in particular whether Lviv in Ukraine, what the girls are like here and whether it's worth coming for that reason. So in this video I'm going to give you an overview of what it's like interacting with girls here in Lviv in Western Ukraine, and how that compares a little bit with other cities in the region, and whether that's whether it's a good reason for you to come, if that's your main priority. And then I'll go into a little bit what else you can do in Lviv. It's not just about girls. Before I launch into today's video, just over there is actually where I've been staying, and it's got a really cool view from it, actually from my room. It's Opera Passage Apart Hotel. So I just want to let you know about that, give you a little bit of an overview of a great option actually right here in the center. This is the old town right behind me, and the Apart Hotel actually has a view onto it, which is really nice, really cool, and I really love the service there, and just as a place, actually the breakfast and everything that came with it. So I thought that's a good option for you to know about, because another thing, of course, that clients ask me about when they're traveling here in Ukraine is where to stay and what I recommend in terms of hotels or apartments. And this is kind of this is definitely a combination, because it's an apart hotel and it's right in the center with that view. So I'm going to put a link to the Apart Hotel down below in the description to this video. So if you're coming here to Lviv for whatever reason and you want to see that view for yourself and hang out and actually stay at the Apart Hotel, then you can go and do that pretty easily. So it's a great option if you're here in Lviv. So now back into the stuff that you're really interested in, is what is it like in terms of girls here in Lviv in Western Ukraine. Now, as you know, Ukrainian women in general are famous for their beauty, and I've made several videos about why you should date them, why you shouldn't date them in general. But I have to say that the culture and just the ethnic mix is a little bit different. I mean, I should maybe frame it as the aesthetic look here in Lviv in Western Ukraine is distinct to a certain extent from other cities like Kiev, the capital, or Kharkiv in the east of Ukraine, or Odessa in the south of Ukraine, where you've seen a lot of my videos from. And just as, I mean, of course, people are Ukrainian here, whether they happen to be in Kharkiv, Odessa, or Lviv, or Kiev, the capital, or anywhere else in the country. But there is definitely a little bit of a difference in terms of how girls look. And while compared to other countries in Europe, there's no doubt that girls in Lviv definitely are above average in the looks department, and in general there are a lot of beautiful girls here. It is not quite the same as being in those other cities like Kiev, which is the capital, which attracts a lot of people from all over the country, or eastern Ukraine like Kharkiv or Odessa, where the girls in average are going to be a bit better looking in my opinion. Now, why is that? Why is the difference? Well, here it tends to be more ethnically Ukrainian. The city, people speak in Ukrainian every day, as opposed to when you go to those other cities like Odessa or Kharkiv, where they tend to be Russian speaking. That's because they had a different mix of people come in greater numbers in Soviet times especially, and they lived there in those cities and they mixed, and that's why you have a little bit of a difference in terms of aesthetics. Whilst here in Lviv it tends to be more what we call ethnic Ukrainians, so they're not going to be mixed in with other people who came during Soviet times. There is still a lot of Russian spoken in Lviv. Don't think that no one speaks Russian or something, or that you can't speak Russian here. No one's going to care whether you speak in English, Russian, or Ukrainian in general. Of course, if you do learn Ukrainian, that's going to be a little bit of an advantage. Someone, привет. Hello. So I should have actually turned the camera and shown you, but now they walked off. anyways, you would have got to see what girls look like in Lviv. Well, they are friendly, as you can see, at least you can judge by my reaction to their greeting there. So in general, I would say that girls in Lviv tend to be a little bit shorter in average than you're going to see in cities like, as I said, other cities in Ukraine further to the east or to the south. Also, they tend to have less blonde hair naturally. You're going to see that a lot more in, say, the center of Ukraine or the east of Ukraine. Actually, in Odessa, girls don't tend to be very blonde either. They tend to be a lot more, a little bit, I would say, darker because it's closer to the Balkans. I mean, when I did the DNA test video, you saw that the girls in Odessa, who I gave the DNS to, a lot of them had maybe 30% of their DNA heritage coming from that Balkans region, and their people tend to be less blonde and blue eyes than they're going to be in Scandinavia or especially or in maybe the Baltics, because a lot of the girls also had DNA coming from those regions as well. So that's kind of what you see here in Lviv in terms of looks. It's still pretty good. I'm not saying that the girls are not pretty here. They definitely are. If we were to take it on an average across Europe, then there's no debate about that at all. But I am giving you exactly very detailed information if you're going to travel to the region because you're interested in coming here. And you probably aren't going to have 3 months to hang out and explore the whole country. So I want to give you that very, as always, candid information about what I think in general about the looks in the different parts of Ukraine or Belarus or Russia. But so to sum up that, it's going to be a little less on the beauty side than you're going to see in other cities. But if you are coming from anywhere further west in Europe, it's still going to be very impressive. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about, because it's not just about looks, although as guys we are very visual in how we decide who we're interested in, what kind of girls we're interested in. The second thing is societally how open they are to foreigners. And I would say that in general, Lviv is a more conservative city than you're going to find in other parts of Ukraine, definitely compared to Kiev. And compared to Odessa, it depends, because I think Odessa is actually very reserved when it comes to being open to foreigners because they just have so much tourism there, and foreigners have a bad reputation in general. I go into that in some of my other videos. I'm going to link my 5 reasons to date a Ukrainian, 5 reasons not to date a Ukrainian, both in the description below and also up in a card. Probably it's going to appear boom, boom, boom up there. It should be in this corner. So if you haven't seen those videos, definitely go and check them out. So as you probably gathered from just the background there, Lviv is a very beautiful city. It has this old world feel. It's quite unique in Ukraine. There is another city called Chernovtsi that also has this kind of older Austro-Hungarian and architecture that was in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire as well, and it's preserved. Here it had a history very closely attached with Poland and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth as well. So you can see it's this kind of typical Central European, Eastern European look in terms of the architecture. That means that a lot of tourists come here to Lviv. So you coming as a foreign guy means that you are not going to stand out here at all. There are a lot of foreigners here. In terms of nationalities, there's a lot of guys from Turkey. There are a lot of guys from Poland. We're very, very close to the Polish border here, and definitely at the weekend, I can tell you, I'm here in April, just coming on the lead up to the Easter period, and at the weekends, it is full of Poles coming here. I'm not sure if they come from Warsaw or from the east of Poland, just cross the border, they fly here, but there are a lot of them. In addition to that, there's a reasonable number of Canadians, French-speaking Canadians I've noticed, and recently there are a lot of low-cost airlines that are flying from Scandinavia, the UK, Germany, directly here to Lviv. So there are just a lot of tourists. That means you are not going to stand out here at all. And in all cities that are touristic, even if the local people are friendly and open, there's just so many that you don't really stand out so much. Now, in the past, that was completely different. I remember coming here, I got reminded actually on Facebook yesterday by a photo I took 5 years ago here on the main square, on Rynok Square, Market Square, with a view of the town hall that I think you can just, yeah, you should be able to see it. It's right behind me, maybe, whoop, there. That's that little thing behind the statue. And at the time, there was basically no foreigners here. I mean, no Western Europeans for sure, no North Americans, because just after the revolution on Maidan, of course, people were worried, they were concerned about coming to Ukraine. That is not the case today. The secret is out. You can come to a city like Lviv, it's completely safe, and as a result, there are a lot of foreigners here. So I would say that whilst local girls are definitely curious about traveling to the West, we're very close to the border, of course, and they are open to foreigners. There are a lot of them, so don't come here thinking that girls are going to be super enthusiastic just because you're a foreigner. I would say on the openness scale, it's probably a little less open than it's going to be in Kiev, which is a capital. You have to remember that it's like a big village here in Lviv, but it's probably going to be more open in my experience, and for you as well, than actually Odessa, which is really inundated with tourists during the summer. Here it's definitely going to be between the two, I would say, in terms of the openness scale and being a foreigner, how you are perceived. Of course, being from North America, Western Europe is probably the best nationality to have here. I have a friend, Hakan, who studied Ukrainian with me, who's from Turkey, and he always had to face the prejudice, or the negative, I wouldn't say prejudice, but just negative initial reaction of a lot of girls to Turkish guys. There were a lot more in the past. The Turkish lira has dropped in the last year. I think I read it dropped 40%, maybe that's more or less now since I saw that headline, and there are definitely less Turks traveling as a result, because obviously the prices here in Ukraine have increased quite significantly for them. Also, they've increased a bit because of the gaining popularity, growing popularity of the city. It's definitely not as cheap as it was even 2 years ago, never mind 5 years ago after the revolution. So that's going to continue as well, but that's not relevant for whether girls here are going to be interesting for you or not. Just that, remember in summary that being a foreigner is not going to make you that exclusive here in Lviv. So the next point that a lot of my clients ask me is, how good is the English here amongst local girls? If that's very pertinent to you if you do not speak Ukrainian or Russian. Now, as I said, Lviv is a city where people speak Ukrainian and not Russian in daily life in general. You can, of course, despite any Russian and generally Russian propaganda that you cannot speak Russian here. Of course you can speak Russian here in the center. No one is going to be mean to you in my experience or in my friend's experience if you speak in Russian as opposed to Ukrainian. People are primarily concerned about communication or they will speak to you in English. Of course you can do all those things touristic in the center. There will be menus in English, etc., etc. That's not going to be a big issue for you. But in general, the level of English in this region, just overall in Ukraine is not very high, and that is something that my clients have to, they need to find a solution to when they come here. So I would say that Lviv, compared to the other cities in the region, the level of English is higher just because we're closer to the border. Girls in general tend to speak some English, probably some Polish, because Ukrainian and Polish have a certain basic commonality in terms of vocabulary especially, and we're very close to the border. And to a certain extent, a lot of girls actually speak German here, basic German here as well, but you're going to be concerned primarily with English and what their English skills are like. On a European level, it's going to be below average, but on an Eastern European level, that means like Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, it's going to be above average for that. So probably you're going to be able to communicate in that very basic level without a problem. But if you want to go deeper, then definitely English speaking is not going to be very strong for most girls here. And being able to speak at least some Russian, if not Ukrainian, will go a considerable way in terms of your ability to communicate. I always encourage you, of course, to learn the local language as much as possible. Here in this city, that would be Ukrainian, and actually that's why I'm here, because I'm actually on a Ukrainian course for a couple of weeks with a language school, and I'm going to make a video or two about that, obviously my vlog from here, and I'm going to let you know in another Vodcast episode how I got on of speaking Ukrainian with local girls, whether that actually helped me and build a better rapport with them, or it was completely superfluous and I actually would have been better off speaking English all the time and not learning Ukrainian. That's going to come up in another Vodcast episode. So definitely make sure at this point, I'm just going to ask you to make sure that you're obviously subscribed because we're well into the video, but make sure that you've hit that notification bell beside it. That way you get notified when I upload the future videos from here in Lviv and the other countries and cities that I'm going to. For example, going to be going to obviously back to Odessa this summer, and I'm going to be going back to Belarus. Been making great videos there recently. And a little bit of exclusive that I am planning to go to Russia. Haven't decided on the city in June. And if you're interested in coming there and maybe meeting up with me and being coached by me and having that Tsar experience, then definitely write me a message at Connor Klein at tsarexperience.com or DM me on my Instagram. My handle is Tsar Experience. I'm going to send an email out maybe even this weekend when I'm recording it, and it's actually going to be uploaded. Probably the email went out yesterday off to my mailing list. So if you're not on that mailing list, make sure that you're subscribed to it, and then you'll also get these emails from me. But I'm going to give you an exclusive opportunity to actually come and do the Tsar Experience in Russia, as opposed to there's a special way to go there visa free that I've discovered coming up in June, and I'm only going to share with you guys who either write me a message, write me an email because you're interested in coming, or you're on my mailing list. So definitely go and make sure that you have at least find out how I'm going to do it, because it is pretty cool. So let's get back to the reasons about whether you should come to Lviv for girls or not. So another thing that you're going to be definitely interested in is how you're going to meet girls if you come here. So I've given you an overview of the looks, whether they're open to foreigners, but where are you going to meet them? So what is basically the social scene like here in Lviv, and how does that differ from maybe other cities in the region that maybe you're also familiar with? Now, I have to say I get a little bit caught out here because I'm a night owl. I like to work quite late and then go out and socialize in the evening, and that is a bit of an issue here because people tend to go out earlier. It's a little bit, more similar to the times that you would go out in, say, Ireland or the UK, where people traditionally start drinking and partying earlier in the evening, especially on a Friday after work, than, say, in countries in Southern Europe or Latin America, this style of going out extremely late. It's actually kind of what I prefer. I prefer to go out later, but here definitely, at around, I think we're coming up to sunset, so it's probably just after 8 p.m. There are a lot of people walking through the center here right now, out drinking on the terraces, in the bars, in the restaurants, and that's something that's very typical here, that people tend to go out earlier. There's a very dynamic bar culture here. Restaurants are going to be full, the cafes are going to be buzzing, but the counterbalance to that is actually the clubbing scene is weaker than you would expect. There are some clubs that are quite popular, but in general it's not going to be focused so much on the clubs as it is on the bars and restaurants and cafes, or just walking around the center earlier in the evening. And that's definitely different to what I've experienced in other Ukrainian cities like Kiev or Odessa, which are the most popular to visit, where it's going to be really a hardcore clubbing scene. Here it's a bit weaker in that, so definitely you're going to have to be prepared to go out earlier and meet people. Of course, during the day there are lots of cafes that are full of people, and you have these terraces. Now that the weather is getting nice, people sit out, so it's very, very easy and very social as a city in that sense. But you do need to get your timing right and not do what I did actually at the beginning of this trip a little bit, which was I was working really hard last weekend and I was going out super late, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And then it's really not the same as going to those other Ukrainian cities, or a Russian city, big city like Moscow, where it's going to be pumping until 6 a.m. No, you definitely need to set yourself up to go out a little bit earlier. So the final thing that I want to talk about, and this is something that I've addressed in another video, and I don't really like the term. It's another episode of Vodcast. I'll also, of course, link that below and also up in a card, and that is the name of that podcast was Are Ukrainian Girls Easy? And I guess that's what you want to know. Are the girls easy here in Lviv? Now, I don't like the term because I don't really see it as pejorative. If a girl wants to sleep with lots of guys or whatever, or it wants to hook up quickly with a guy, that's completely cool. Me, I'm not judgmental at all, but the common parlance is easy, in inverted commas. So I would say that here in Lviv, it is a little bit more conservative, as I've mentioned, and I think that kind of is more difficult if you're coming for like a weekend and you think that you're gonna hook up with a girl very quickly, have a one-night stand, or have something happen very quicker rather than later. I think that's going to be, in general, a bit harder here. It does happen. It has happened to me several times, but I've also spent a good bit of time in this city, and I would think overall that's not a realistic expectation in Lviv. If the girl is actually from Lviv, it is like a big village, and girls are, of course, worried about social stigma and their status if they're seen hooking up with anyone so quickly, and it definitely a foreigner who's in as a tourist for the weekend would not be good with that. That said, this city, as I said, has a lot of tourists, and I did mention that, you know, the foreign guys who basically come from other countries to visit the city. But what I didn't mention so far is the fact that a lot of girls come from other parts of Ukraine to spend a weekend here, because it's a beautiful city. As you can see behind me, we're coming up to sunset. It has that old world architecture. It has that cafe culture, lots of great restaurants. It's cheaper than, say, the price of things in the capital Kiev, and definitely Odessa during the summer. It's a bit cheaper here in Lviv. So a lot of girls actually come here in groups. Maybe it's from Kiev, maybe it's from another Ukrainian city, and they're here on a weekend trip to have some fun. So those kind of girls, of course, are here on holidays that don't have, you know, their neighbors or their peers other than their close friends judging them. So that is more likely to, if you do have a good rapport and you do have some intimacy with a girl like that who's visiting the city on holidays, then that is more likely to result in some sort of like hookup, whether that's sex or just making out or something. That's more likely to happen quicker than with a girl who's actually from here, and that goes in a lot of cities the same way. But that is a plus. And I should have said that also probably at the beginning in terms of the looks, that I was referring to girls who are from Lviv, and of course you have girls from all over Ukraine coming here, and from Belarus as well. So you do have those girls who might be on average a little bit better looking than the girls in Lviv. So that also kind of balances it out. So they're definitely good options for coming here in terms of girls, either the local girls or the girls from other cities. I would say that as a final point about girls from Lviv, that they are a bit more westernized in the sense that they're of course closer to Poland and then the countries in Western Europe, and the culture is a bit different. So I would say that things like scammers and gold diggers are definitely less of a problem here than you're going to see in the other Ukrainian cities. It's not a city that attracts sex tourism in general, thankfully, so you don't have the same number of then dishonest girls looking for guys to kind of rip off or scam or use for something. That is definitely dramatically less here, and that is a very good reason to come to the girls, because it's for the girls, the more honest girls of Lviv, than say in other Ukrainian cities where, like Odessa in particular, or Kiev, the capital, where scams are very commonplace, unfortunately. And that's another reason for you to maybe shoot me an email if you're going to come here to Lviv or another city in Ukraine, because I'm helping a lot of my clients either in person with the coaching or just, you know, ensuring that they have the Zara experience, that just this phenomenal travel experience when they come here to Ukraine or another country in the region. But also I've been helping a lot of my clients just remotely over WhatsApp or Skype, and helping them with the planning logistics and making sure that they stay safe, that they don't run into those girls who want to steal their money or use them for something. That they also, I can't obviously meet everybody, I'm only one person and I need to be in one place at any one time, but remotely I can coach you and help you a lot with your planning, and I'm always there. My clients can of course call me and write me when these situations come up, and remotely I can provide you like with the advice that you need to make a good decision. So if that's of interest to you, definitely write me an email. I mentioned it earlier, I mentioned it again, ConorKlein@ZaraExperience.com, or reach out to me on Instagram. Zara Experience is my handle. You should be following me on Instagram anyways, because I give you little snippets in the Instagram stories about what I'm doing, who I'm hanging out with, where I am, and you get a glimpse of what it's going to be like for you in any case when you come here, and that's all for free. So I think that's a pretty good overview. You got 5 basic points there about what it's like to come to Lviv in terms of girls and whether you should come here. It really depends on what your main priorities are. I would say that if your number one priority is girls and you're not really interested in anything else in Ukraine, then probably it's definitely better to go to another city like Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv, Dnipro, anywhere basically further east of here. But if you're looking for a balance and you want to walk around a beautiful city, enjoy the coffee culture, enjoy some good wine, some amazing food, because it really has a great array of restaurants here, and it's a bit cheaper than the other cities on top of that, in spite of being amazingly beautiful, then I think Lviv is a great choice for you. I actually have a client who's going to fly in here in June probably at some stage. We're going to organize that, and he's going to come here because he had those preferences, that he wanted a balance between experiencing an amazing city in Eastern Europe that's quite unique, and of course meeting local beautiful women, but he didn't want that to be the main priority. So that's a very good option as well to consider if depending on your preferences and what you want to do here in Ukraine. I've rented long enough, and I can see that probably the light is fading on my camera. I'm just looking at this one right now, and it's already telling me that I'm basically pretty close to going dark. So this is the point where I should definitely sign off and go and enjoy. It's actually a Thursday evening here in Lviv. I'm going to go back to my apart hotel, watch. Also, it looks pretty cool at night out of my apart hotel, that view onto the old town. I'm going to get ready, going to go out and socialize a bit earlier than I have been normally. I'm going to stop talking right now, otherwise I will go on for probably another 20 minutes, as you know in these videos. So I'll see you in the very next one. It's do побачення. See you very, very soon. Ciao.
SAR Experience.